Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining me on 21st Century Native Leaders. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode with my guest today. Follow me on Facebook, 21st Century Native Leaders, or Navajo Podcaster. I'm also on Instagram as Navajo Podcaster and on Twitter, Navajo Podcaster. Thank you. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining me on 21st Century Native Leaders. My name is Peter Desert III, and I am here with Zefren Anderson, who is an amazing weaver. Thanks for being on the show, Zefren.
Thank you, Peter.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what are your clans, what part of the Navajo Nation are you from?
Okay. Zefren Anderson, Yenisha. Huskers Yenisha. Fana Basichin, Kitachini Dashiche, Ashin Dashinawa. Hello, my name is Zefren Anderson. My clans are Mud, born for the Mini Hogans people. My maternal grandfather is the Red House people, and my paternal grandfather is the Salt people. And I'm from Shiprock, New Mexico, but I grew up in the Washes just west of that. And our weaving in our family is discontinuous because both sides of our family was pretty well off right after the Depression. There was oil discovered on my dad's side of the family, and my mom's side of the family, there was a silversmith, and the farm provided the subsistence. So, at least for our family, weaving didn't become the main source of subsistence, so it became more of just utilitarian, but it didn't support us the way other families did. So, by the time that the boarding school era happened, a lot of my aunts and uncles on my dad's side didn't get taught weaving, and my mom only did a few weavings when she was young, but she never had to use it to support herself. So using the stories that they told of how the weavings, how amazing they were before the creation of the agency system, I started there with just little programs that happened in school, visiting my grandparents and wanting to learn, and eventually was gifted tools on both sides of the family. And I learned as much as I could before I went off to pursue, get my higher education at UNM as a mechanical engineer. But that went on hold in 2008 when my father needed more intense care at home, and there was no one free enough to take care of him. So I put that all on hold and came home to take care of him. And from 2008 to about 2015, I struggled to find a place to fit back on the reservation because my experience off reservation wasn't compatible to find employment on the reservation because I had 6 years experience with a hospital system, just being a medical records clerk and a mid-level supervisor for retail. But there was no opportunity for that on the reservation. And a lot of the jobs I could find made it impractical to take care of my dad and keep that job. But not until I decided to bring the tools out, and I took a journey to all of the old winter sheet camps and the old summer sheet camps, and went to those old storage pits and placed in the sheds that my grandparents used to store stuff in. I still found some really old weavings, even some more tools and some pictures of when my family used to weave on both sides, and tried to teach myself from that, combine it all. And then around 2015, through the local youth group, Navajo Dine Youth Committee, a mentorship opportunity showed up with one of the master weavers from Roy Katie. And three of us were chosen to mentor with him for 3 years. And he filled in all the missing pieces that allowed me to get back up to where our family's weaving was. Before the 30s, using tools that were just as old. And it's been a humbling experience to have recognition now for using those old techniques that people don't normally weave because of how weaving is in its current state now. What I do is more historic knowledge based off my family stories and pieces I see in the museum that are often 200, 300 years old. Some of the oldest pieces I've seen are about 950 to 1100 years old. And they're still relevant to weaving because they're created in a way that's so different than the way our songs talk about weaving. The way Father Woman and the Holy People bestowed on us the knowledge, it hasn't really changed in that long period. Only within the last 160 years did it become what it is now. And it's a continuing journey. I acknowledge my mentor, Roy Cady, and my family that even though they may have thought that it was the past at the time, they still held on to these tools, they still held on to the stories enough that it was able to come back into our family. And now I hope to share with other people, young people, other weavers, even other tribes, what I've come to discover, that weaving and living in balance with Mother Earth, Amazon, it's universal to all of us. It's in our best interest to keep that idea going, perpetuating it. And that's in a nutshell my journey.
Wow, that's pretty extensive. I mean, that's definitely not, just going, like, getting a 4-year degree. It's definitely a process, it sounds like. So talk with me about the process for you to be chosen to be mentored by Mr. Cady.
Well, first, it was an interest in going to his workshops. Like, he does free workshops. Some other weavers do the free Dine, the free workshops, and just make your presence known and your drive to learn. And usually these relationships will start forming themselves, because even in our tradition, one weaver can't really master everything completely. It's the entire community, even beyond just one family and region. It's really a bigger family. And once you start herding sheep, getting water for the livestock, for some of these for the elderly that are willing to share the knowledge, taking care of their sheep and cheering for them, you become part of a bigger family. Almost like how our clanship system used to be, where not one person feels like they're totally overburdened by what they want to do and what they have to do and what they need to do. And it's really helped me. I'm starting to use the same idea for language. I'm starting to be able to understand Navajo. For my dad's family, there are 2 generations where Navajo wasn't the main language. And on my mom's side, they know Navajo, but it's not the everyday language. And I'm starting to understand it, even though I didn't get the opportunity to learn through my family. And it's also the same with culture. There's a lot of things I experienced that I wish I experienced earlier, but I'm starting to find out more about who I am which means is how I relate to everyone around me.
Wow, that's amazing. So, can you talk with me a little bit about? You had talked about the old techniques. What do the old techniques entail?
Being able to ask yourself, what do I want this weaving to do? What do I want it to feel like? Generally, when you weave, there's always a purpose to what you're committing yourself to, because it could be a 4-week process for a small weaving to 5 years to up to 7 years. Some of the bigger weavings. What is it is asking you to be made? So, like, there's a whole encyclopedia of weavings when it comes to that. But is it going to be a floor weaving that insulates me from the freezing ground, that can also be waterproof but soft and drapable enough to roll up easily and store easily? Do I need it to be hard and crisp so the corners, it resists wanting to fold in on itself, so it wants to stay flat? Do I want the air to come through but not the water? Or do I want it to be waterproof? Or do I even want it to hold water? There's a whole there's so many different weavings when it comes to what could come off the loom, and we only know a small percentage of it now based on stuff that's been carried on. But if you look in the museum, there's weavings to let light in at the door but keep insects out. There's weavings to insulate the smoke hole but still let light in. There's weavings that used to be used for water bags. There's so many things out there. Mm-hmm. And then when you add clothing to it, how do you want the fabric to perform when it's on your body? When you're out there and there's no fire around and a storm's approaching, is what you're wearing and the blanket you have. These are things that I put myself through in these 2 years. I've taken my blanket out and tried to figure out what the minimal amount of blankets you would need to survive freezing weather. What's the minimal amount of clothing you would need? It's interesting that pound for pound, if you just have a regular Navajo outfit, male or female, a light blanket, a medium blanket, and a heavy blanket, it's a lot warmer and more adapted to our climate than something that you would buy from the store. And it's more flexible. Mm-hmm. It actually gives you a fair amount of freedom. As long as you had these 6 items and a water jug, there's really no reason for you not to fear being away from civilization for long periods of time. And I think that's an incredibly empowering feeling. Mm-hmm. To be in a mountain trail and to say to yourself, I could stay here as long as I want. And it's a feeling that I think everyone should go through. It's a pattern. Most of our elders, this is everyday thinking to them. My grandmother could just be dropped off and we would walk. It would seem like miles. And people would say, like, no, let me take you further. And nope, I've got something to show him. And it would just, to them, would look like us walking into the desert. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is empowering, because that was a very fearful thing for me growing up. And now it's not really something I fear anymore. It's just another night for survival.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I didn't realize it was that intricate. There were that many details, that many types of weaving patterns, and the weavings that are, the utilization and the utility of it. It's pretty amazing. So how would you become a master weaver? You talked about Mr. K being a master weaver. How would you get to that level?
Well, there's like 3 different schools of thought, and I only believe in one. One says you go out to the art shows, you receive accolades, you receive awards, you receive public recognition, and that makes you a master weaver. I don't really subscribe. I don't believe that's the way. Others say your master weaver is tied to their children and their mastery of it. So a lot of master weavers will call themselves that because they have a whole next generation of weaving that they passed on. And that, to me, it's what I'm going to go about, because right now things are so dire for teaching traditional knowledge and to take care of my dad that I don't have time to have a family. And I don't find that as a bad thing. I don't find it as something. I'm a failure as a Navajo for not having a family. But it's incredibly empowering too to know that even though I may never have children, there are people that want to know and are following me as if I'm already their uncle. In some places, even like just their uncle or even a grandpa if I get older. For me, what makes you a master weaver is the reason why I don't really want to be called a master weaver, even with you. It's white hair, experience, doing it for a long time, and I only have a few white hairs. But it's not enough for me to say, like, I know everything. It's more like I suggest at this point. And, it'd be a very long time before I'd be comfortable with that. I'm a technical weaver. I'm a historic weaver, an experimental weaver. But in no means would I say master at this point, because there have been people who have done this for many, many, many years, and personal decisions or circumstance, they never went to art shows, they never got awards, but they have amazing weaving. Even if it's judged traditionally by art standards, the trading post regional styles, if they're making something new, or if it's just a simple striped saddle blanket. All of those are more deserving, because I'm new. And having male weavers too is a new, it's a new old phenomenon. At least in how Navajo weaving is portrayed in the Western sense worldwide in American history. Rarely do they ever talk about male weavers. It seems more like a once in a while aberration. There's a male weaver here, and he did great things. But it's portrayed as outside the norm for our people. But being from the north, and having talked to several elders of the north within the Kitachitni clan group and the Ho'oslana clan group, sometimes a male weaver will come out of that, and it's expected, it's normal, it's part of the culture on what they do. And also with stuff from the north, we have more oral traditions and family groups of longer lineages of weaving outside of what archaeologists would say is historic Navajo. For Ho'oslanas, in many books mentioned and within our family, is that when the groups were leaving Mesa Verde during the depopulation period in the 1300s, they didn't leave. They wanted to stay north of the San Juan River, and in doing that, they were able to survive and integrate into the new groups that came into the area. And now, what would be considered the net now has a link all the way back. Who knows how far back? In our family, we said we've always been here. We're not just new northern tribes raiding for survival. It's like some of our clans have gone through the entire cycle that has gone through different cultures in the last 2,000 years, and their stories and their experience create our oral tradition. It makes us a better people because we're told through these stories when to recognize when change is coming and how we're supposed to adapt to it, which usually means we just go back to how it was when things were not as complex. And you can track the history through the weaving. There are instances where weaving, at least 900 years ago, there was an understanding of mathematics, division, geometry, to get these weavings to do what you see in rock art or pottery that you see in the museums.
Mm-hmm.
And they took it up to a point where their responsibilities to Mother Earth were considered not important, and how their comfort in life was more important than taking care of Mother Earth. We know the stories because our ancestors witnessed what happens when that happens. And that creates us. And I like the fact that, you know, a grandma that just will strike the cattle back and pull her way. The award that the new generation of women and a few men are making to break out of the regional styles and create their own net-inspired weaving is breaking out of the 150-year task that was placed upon us. So people can make blankets again and have it recognized as art.
Mm-hmm.
And not something that is made to be placed on the floor and not used for anything else.
So how many years have you been weaving?
Since 2015, when I built my first loom outside of this building, little cardboard craft project. But I don't use craft projects anymore. Weaving becomes its own discipline after you start doing it seriously. This blanket is my sixth blanket since I started with Roy. Usually I'll do 2 blankets a year now.
Wow, that's amazing. And how many hours a day do you typically weave?
If I averaged out my hours, it would be about 6 to 4 a day, 6 days a week. But, you know, life on a reservation doesn't run by the clock. So there are times where, like, I'll get little sleep and it's like shift work. So, like, to get it out, I will weave until I'm tired, sleep, and then weave again. And there are advantages and disadvantages to that because our culture is not about overwork. And though that has helped me sometimes, it's not something that I ask people to do because it affects your body. It affects your mindset if you're not prepared to how to get out of that. And, you know, just keeping everything in balance, essentially. Not to get too much into the weaving as, you know, as production work. More of, I have time to do this right. When you feel that way, you can create things.
Wow. That is really amazing. So, what's the one piece of advice you have for future weavers?
Learn the history. A lot of the net history is not even written by our own hands, and it's not spoken by our own voices. But yet there were a lot of witnesses to the last 300 years. There's a lot of journals out there. There's a lot of descriptions. There's a lot of activity and pictures, drawings, even. Get a chance to look at the Natal rock arts. Hire a medicine man and go to all the different places where these rock arts are at. If you're a new person and you've never been truly a part of what we call Dine, if you go with the right people and see these rock art, you're going to get a bigger impression of what our purpose in this life is and what the sacrifices were of the people who lived before us when you're in those areas. And to do it soon, because the encroachment of resource extraction is rapidly degrading a lot of these rock art and places where, as the medicine man that took us out there, that these aren't ruins. These are living homes where they left while they were alive, and maybe someday they might actually have to return. And the rock art is just amazing. I've made these ads based on what was on there because there was still hints of color in the blue, the red, and the black, showing that weavers were there and weavers left their impression on the rock art. And if you're ever fortunate enough to come across a workshop where a weaver used to weave, their notes are on the rocks, their notes are in the mud. And it's an amazing experience. And don't be afraid of our culture. Go out there to the ceremonies, talk to the elders. They may be mean. You may think they're mean, but some of the meanest people that I thought were that way ended up being the nicest, sweetest people after we actually got to know each other, after you introduce your clans and find out that, oh, I'm sorry, Yash, you're my son, or you're my nephew. And I said, hello, mother, or hello, auntie, or hello, grandma. You're never truly alone as long as you say your clans. And once you get your clans down, they will help you with your language, they will help you with your culture. And I think that's the greatest tool we've had. Why we've always emphasized clans, but a lot of people have never really emphasized the purpose of them. There's a lot of power in our clans. And I think teaching that to the youngest members of our tribe will truly help us perpetuate and revitalize what we're missing at this point.
I agree with that. I think that's some important advice that you just gave. So you talked about the purpose of our life. What do you think is the purpose of our lives?
There's this, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you're going to have to look it up. I'm a sci-fi person. I grew up on, I would do chores to pay for gas so I could watch Star Trek at my grandma's house because we didn't have electricity, so I had to earn money for gas. And I would watch Star Trek after getting home from school. That question, is it just us? Are we alone? Are we just one little speck of sand in a sea of fish? And being from sci-fi, it's like if life truly existed all over the universe, wouldn't we have been contacted? And maybe we have. Maybe we don't understand if we have. But at least now for leading world scientists, there's been no evidence of active contact outside of our solar system. And people debate, philosophers go and talk and think. And an interesting theory comes up, which I think was called the Fermi paradox. Fermi? Mm-hmm. Where, given the odds that the sun is Earth support life, then the odds of a planet forming within the habitable ring of that sun, and all these little things start making these odds incredibly slim, where you look at the entire lifespan of a solar system, a civilization, and then the universe, you start seeing that what is billions of years old and what is beyond the comprehension of our brains now is reflected in the smallest organism and its life cycle. Mm-hmm. The macro reflects the micro. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we have not been contacted is because there have been millions of other civilizations that went through the same thing we're doing, and they got to a level of development and it destroyed them. They were never able to learn from their past mistakes to keep life going. They were going to live for, they were going to live for themselves and their comfort instead of their environment and the people and life around them. And I think the biggest challenge to our tribes and the world in general is that now that we as a people have survived the Southwest through the last great calamities and survived and became a new culture, we have the world turned, the people as a united organism, deciding whether they're going to keep this life going or if they're just going to be settled on protecting, living with us. We have thousands of years of everything being okay, and there were people and there was land, and we have less than 400 years of very rapid development, and in 400 years the land and the earth has been affected. And what is 400 years over the entire lifespan of Mother Earth? And you start seeing that maybe things are more meant to perpetuate all life than the life of just one.
Wow, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep. Yeah,
and that's what sci-fi always goes through, because you see shows where they go to a planet and it seems like a jungle, but then there are ruins of this advanced people.
Wow, that's pretty good, pretty deep philosophy. So talk with me about how you got invited or applied to show at the Heard Museum.
That's also all because of Roy Cady. Roy Cady was asked to be a featured demonstrator 3 years ago, and he asked the committee if his apprentices can help him set up and run things, because he felt he needed help to teach these things he'd already taught us. And it was actually a way to get us to learn how to teach these things to other people. Preservation within our culture, and when we go out there as cultural ambassadors for weaving, that we can effectively convey what goes into weaving. So every weaving is given the proper knowledge that a buyer, a collector needs to know that it's not just a weaving that comes off a machine, but it's a record, a living record of a weaver's actions over the entire time that the weaving is created. It's essentially like a very stable form of a digital storage. Because every yarn has energy that the weaver put into that yarn. Every intertwining, every little bump on there is recording the life of the weaver at that moment, and that it takes time, and that weaving a blanket may only take 6 months, but there are some Navajo weavings that are 400 years old. Some complete blankets have survived 1,200 years. And 1,200 years versus 4 months of its weaving, you ask me if an iPod's going to last that long.
Probably not.
But in that, it's like, it's something I'm forever grateful for Roy for allowing us to experience and to meet these people that gave us a chance 3 years ago. As the next year, we all applied, and we were all juried in for weaving. And it was a remarkable thing for three male weavers that were relatively young to jury into an art show with elders and to find community with them, because we're all in the same. We're all weavers. We're all artists. It was an incredible experience, and so grateful for Roy, because I don't think any of us would have been able to do that maybe after many, many years of going through, regional styles before trying to do something new in a new setting. Mm-hmm. He allowed us great freedom once we became demonstrators.
Oh, that's awesome. He sounds like an amazing weaving master. So whenever you look at this, like weaving and life, what's the biggest challenge of being a weaver?
Right now, it's trying to fit modern life and devote enough time to their room. To have a house with internet and electricity, more of your time is devoted keeping those on than to weaving. It's just the challenge of trying to find that balance between how much technology can I allow myself and how much of tradition am I living. Because we have a TV, but it stays off most of the time while I'm weaving. It's a distraction. Just keeping it relevant, because there's a lot against it. Because the traditional sense of to be successful is to get good grades, go to college, and come back and benefit your people. That's the story that my generation believed in. But when we tried to follow it, you're outside the reservation, but your college degree anchors you to off reservation. You have to stay off in order to live, in order to pay off your bills. There's a lot of years that you aren't with your people on the reservation before you can finally return. And by that time it happens, you may no longer have the ability to do the things you wanted when you were younger. I know a lot of people have tried coming back to the reservation to take over their livestock, and by the time that they do this, they're already elders themselves, and they're doing the work of what should be their family and a long line of youngsters helping them, learning at the same time. We're waiting to perpetuate our culture till we're after middle age, and I think that's the greatest challenge for us, is how do we find something that works better for us? And I know I'm still a supporter of higher education, but I wish that we as a tribe supported those that did become doctors and engineers to lessen the burden of their education and made it easier for them to integrate back into the reservation with their degrees, that they don't feel like they're being ostracized for leaving. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a big thing. We need our young leaders to grow up being leaders on the reservation, working with multi-generational people, instead of waiting until they're in their 50s where they come essentially to retire on the reservation. They have a learning they have to do to find their place with that multi-generational group that's on the reservation.
Oh, that's pretty amazing and interesting how you talk about that. And there are definitely some challenges that we have to overcome.
I really wish that we were like Mexico and some of the other countries with heritage cultures like Korea and Japan, where there are cultural masters that are supported communally, so they no longer have to worry where they're going to work, where their food's going to come from, or where they're going to live, because the culture finds that their knowledge is valuable enough for them to communally support this person so they can just teach full time their knowledge, so that there's at least two teachers of every different specialization that could be considered traditional. If you look at some of the programs with the Koreans, I really wish we had that on the reservation. But there are so many different types of weaving now that people remember they don't know how to weave.
So whenever you look at what you're talking about, those masters of culture and people that take that into account, I feel like through weaving, you, Kevin, Mr. Katie, Kevin Aspis, Mr. Katie, I feel you guys are doing that through weaving. So what are some of the do's and don'ts whenever you weave and that you were taught?
Everyone gets a chance. What a good program to find the do's and don'ts is the Navajo Cultural Arts program with the Net College. It's a flexible program that works with even older adults to freshly out of high school in a semi-structured environment with a lot of hands-on training and knowledge to find out these things. But it basically comes down to the principles of we put our minds on our art in the same mindset of when they were first created. And as long as you respect your art as it was respected when it was first created, it will ensure that you will never go hungry. It will ensure that your corn has water. Everything that perpetuates life will be coming to you if you follow these rules. And essentially, it puts you in that mindset that your weaving is a living being. While it's on the loom, it's halfway between that first moment and first weaving with our holy people present and, all weavings to come. While it's being woven, it's a living witness and recording of your life. It's going to protect you, or it's going to say, this person acted this way while I was being woven. It's the artist's advocate. When all things are said and done. So when you say your prayers, everything you've done with your traditional tools in the field, whether you're a farmer or a silversmith, when you say your prayers and offerings, these instances that happen while you're creating your artwork or doing your planting, they all will be helping you helping those prayers get answered, or they will be the reason why they don't. If things don't go your way, everything is equal in our spirituality, our philosophy, and culture. If you treat things like how you would treat your grandmother, then things will treat you the same way with love and respect. If you treat it like it is not living, a commodity, something just to make you rich, it's going to take all those things you want away. At least that's what I've gotten from the cultural arts program and everything that my grandparents were trying to teach me. Even though they were second generation boarding school Christians, they still had some cultural teachings in that. I know a lot of people think that it would be considered superstitious, paganism, that's old-fashioned. But I will vouch through my own experience in my life that those things that they teach are relevant. And when you do things bad, it comes back, because we're not the only living beings out here.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
We just need better history teachers. We need to know our history outside of a paragraph and just the wrongs that were done with the treaties, the long walk. There's a whole 200 years of conflict where we came incredibly close to being wiped out that no one talks about. And this is the 17, 16, 1800s. And there's hardly any written material on them. And there's a lot of first-hand sources of this history to have self-motivated researchers to learn it. There's libraries all over the reservation with very rare books written by A lot of the early boarding school curriculums, early private schools that tried to come on the reservation, and Diné College itself, even when it was NCC. There's a plethora of knowledge and books in each of one of these Diné College libraries. It's just sitting there, and people just need to read, ask questions, record their family stories, record how things are done with their families. You don't learn. Perhaps your note can help you restore something that may have well been that close to being forgotten forever. Just to keep learning. That's it. Keep learning.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, you had made some really good points. I mean, I like how very good explanation of how you think about weaving and what you're supposed to be thinking while you're weaving. It's pretty powerful. So, how can people contact you if they would like to learn how to do this or to be a part of the weaving program?
Well, I have usually my messenger on Facebook is a good way to message me. It's Zefren Anderson on Facebook, but I also have a community page, Zefren M. That's ZEFREN -M, and they can find me that way. There's also my Instagram with the same name. Just send me a message. I try to check it as much as I can. If they feel email is an option, they can get me at raidex82.gmail or at gmail.com, which is RAIDEX82@gmail.com. I do have some learners that whenever they have problems, we usually will do video chat so we can figure out the problem. And then we also have, I'm part of a network called Dine, DDI, where we also have free spin-offs where we reconnect elders with people who want to learn weaving, food, all sorts of things. There's one in Calm Point. There's one in the Habitat that meets every second Thursday. It's the newest one to the first winners. We're trying to get the window up one going again. We're always looking for hosts willing to facilitate these meetings. And it's all centered around weaving.
Wow, it sounds like you're connected with a lot of people and doing a lot of work in the community. We are all set with this interview. If you could send me a picture for the background of the podcast, that'd be good. That way people can, put a face to the voice. But I'll probably try to release this in the next week. That way people can hear your story. I put a message out to on my Facebook page, and I asked people who they wanted to hear, whose story they wanted to hear, and your name came up by 2 or 3 people saying that they wanted to hear you talk. So that's why I reached out. So you were requested. Okay, Leah?
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience, and that's pretty amazing. And if you want me to share anything to my Facebook, let me know, and okay, I can meet you. Go on, Net.
Yeah.
Go on, Net.
Hello, listeners. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode with my guest today. Follow me on Instagram, Navajo Podcaster, also on Facebook, 21st Century Native Leader, or Navajo Podcaster. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day. Go on, Net.